I just love the grocery store example. I think that reading this section for the very first time is one of those just like click moments for me where it was just like, this makes so much sense. It's just something I never thought of because truthfully, it's just our natural human instinct to go out the back door. Well, I own this. Why wouldn't I just treat myself better, do it for free, et cetera, et cetera. And I just think if you truly can understand it, like he says, if you can grasp this example, the rest of learning becomes a piece of cake.
Welcome to the Bankless by Design podcast, where we rethink money, ditch the system, and rediscover what it means to truly thrive well. I'm Tricia Miller, mom of 7, financial coach, and founder of ThriveWell. Around here, we believe wealth is more than numbers. It's about freedom, stewardship, and building a legacy that lasts. If you're ready to challenge the norm and take back control of your financial life, you're in the right place. Hello, and welcome back to the Bankless by Design podcast. Today, we're going to be continuing with our Becoming Your Own Banker series, and specifically, we're going to be looking at the second half of the grocery store example. Starts on page 15, but we'll probably be focusing mostly on page 16 if you're following along with us in the 5th edition. So before we get started, though, Jonathan, how are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty well. It's been a busy start back to work after the holidays, kind of getting everything back under wraps, getting caught back up. And we have a national sales conference coming up where we're going to be in Florida next week. So that'll be fun, but also work at the same time. And apparently it's going to be cold. So, but good overall.
Well, good. I'm glad you're getting to go. I understand you're taking an extra couple of days for some personal time down there.
Yep. Got to take advantage.
And even seeing an old friend, I hear.
Yeah, I am. I'm really excited about that. I'm going to see my buddy Noah that I don't think I've seen in 7+ years at this point. So I'm really excited about that.
That'll be great. Very good.
What about you? How are you doing?
Well, I am just coming back from the trip of a lifetime and yes, getting right back into the work and the throes of things. But let me just say this so that it's out in the open. If I ever doubt the goodness of God to me, shame on me, because this was an all expense paid trip to Hawaii that I will never forget. Oh my gosh. It was just so wonderful, so beautiful. I think I went to paradise and back. So it's a little difficult to come home and get back to work, but I have no idea why I got to have such an incredible blessing, but it truly is. So I'm thrilled for that. All right.
I heard you got to see some pretty cool wildlife.
We got to see 50-ton whales just jumping right out of the ocean. Completely unbelievable. Amazing. Just not something you think you're ever going to see like that in close view in real life, not just on a television.
Apparently a volcano erupted yesterday in Hawaii. Nothing major, no damage or anything, but it had 800 feet worth of lava in the air. Like it went out.
Man, I missed it.
Yeah, barely, just barely.
Well, I'm glad it wasn't the one I was biking down. I think there's one that's more active on the main island of Hawaii.
I believe it's that one because it just had an eruption literally in December and just it's episode 40. Apparently there's been 40.
Yeah, I heard that there was one that's very active. The one we went up hasn't been active in a long time on Maui, but we did go up there and see the volcano and then ride bicycle down. That was an experience.
That's awesome.
All right. So back to the grocery store, and I just want to give a little bit of a recap. Now, if you weren't with us for this last episode where we went from the beginning of the grocery store, I would highly recommend you go back to that video. And if you haven't been with us with the whole series, you might want to go back to the beginning of the whole thing to walk through this book with us. But I'm going to just really quickly recap a little bit. We'd gotten through the piece about imagination, and then Nelson sets us up to be able to look at the grocery store example as a way of exercising our imagination about a business model. The reason he uses the grocery store is because it's a business model where you can be the owner and the consumer, because everybody has to eat. Everybody has to buy groceries. And so this sets us up for being able to take it as a comparison to becoming your own banker, because everybody does banking. We just aren't accustomed to be the bank owner, and we're going to be. So he talks about setting up the grocery store business. He mentions the objective of the business, which I want to remind ourselves that the objective of the business is to provide you with income and to build a business that will eventually sell and be profitable enough to provide you with retirement income. So keep that in mind. The objective is basically the same when you're becoming your own banker. Talks about the very minimal profit margins, how small they are with the grocery store. So he shows us the can of peas, the wholesale cost of 57 cents, selling it for 60 cents. There's only a 3-cent profit margin on a can of peas. Says a lot of people are surprised by that in the grocery business. So therefore, it relies heavily upon the ability to turn the inventory. And of course, he goes through 15 times will cover your expenses, 17 times will give you a decent living, but 20 times will give you the ability to retire early. And we reasoned that once you have flipped that can of peas 20 times, you've actually made up 60 cents that can now go buy its own can of peas. So no more money has to come out of the owner's pocket. It is now becoming a compounding exponential curve that will continue on without any more input by you. He says this reminds us of the phenomenon in physics where you have to get to a point of 212 degrees at sea level in order to get to the boiling point. So 210 degrees, it's just hot water. 212 degrees, it's boiling and creates steam, which is very powerful. So it's getting to that point of boiling, which is where we want to go with our banking business. So that's a bit of a recap of what we already covered. And we left off with this. Thus far, the business looks pretty simple, but now we complicate the picture. So now we're going to talk about some of the pitfalls and some of the things that we need to consider as we're becoming our own banker. Again, still likened to the grocery store example. So do you want to start off right there on that, the top of page 16, and just read that paragraph?
Yeah, absolutely. So where we left off last time, thus far, the business looks pretty simple. But now we complicate the picture. Assuming that you are a male, married with children, where is your wife going to shop for groceries? Your store or somewhere else? Further assuming that she chooses correctly your store, she comes into the front door and fills her cart with groceries. Here comes the complicated part. Please pay close attention. This point is critical and requires scrupulous honesty. Out of which door is she likely to take the groceries, the front or the back?
Scrupulous honesty. Where are we all typically going to go if we own the grocery store?
The back. That's the reaction.
Yes, absolutely. Because we think, well, we own the grocery store. Why do we got to pay for it? We've already paid for it, right? He's going to go on to talk about why that's a problem.
When delivering lectures, I ask this question and wait for answers. An amazing number will readily admit that in all probability, she wants to go out the back door, avoiding the cashier at the front. This is a very polite description of theft. Probably more businesses have been destroyed or severely limited by this sort of behavior than anything else. It is a feeling among owners and those related to them that this is our business and we can do anything we want to. Unless this misunderstanding is curbed, the business is doomed. Consider this. Over an extended period of time, can she go out the back door with her groceries without the hired help witnessing her act? I think not. So what will the hired help do as a result? They are going to steal groceries too. You can predict it with certainty.
Okay. And when I read this the first time, all I thought was, man, if we would have read this and understood this back when my parents were running the restaurant. I grew up in a small little diner style restaurant, and we did this all the time. We ate out of our restaurant. We didn't pay for our food. And worse than this, we didn't just eat our own meals as a family out of the restaurant. My dad had people sitting in the back that he entertained while he was working that came in and also ate for free. Now, that's part of his generous spirit, and I get that. But he had customers at the front paying. So we had this scenario happening, let me just say, exponentially. And I can recall our employees, we also let them eat. It was like kind of a thing. So it was definitely, I saw this habit, let me put it that way, right? I saw that if we ate for free, then our help expected to as well. So, everybody had a soda on the shelf. Everybody had an ice cream cone for their break or a burger for their dinner. And we didn't think anything of it. So I can't imagine how much better off my parents might have been had they understood this principle.
I think that's kind of where it definitely requires this separation of you from the business in your mind, whether it's the life insurance or an actual business that you own. As somebody that owns a small business, I find myself doing this all the time. I go buy a nice lot of Lego and I'm like, oh, I want to keep that. Do I pay my business back for that? Not often, And so it really does take this just mental shift of being like, well, that's my business. I should at the bare minimum be covering the costs. That's something that when I started with my own life insurance policy that I recognized not immediately. Like at first it was very easy to go, well, this is my rules. Like, oh, I don't have to pay this back this month. I can wait another month. And yes, you do have that freedom and that flexibility, which is an awesome benefit. And it has helped me at times. But now I've gotten in the habit the past 3 or 4 months and where I'm paying back, my whatever I set personally for myself, for my loans, no matter what, that is getting paid because it's my business and I have to pay my business. And otherwise, where is that going to leave me if I'm just continually taking from it without giving back to it, if that makes sense?
Yeah. And this is his material point is we do need to think about it as a business.
Yep.
And as a business owner, this is a key important piece. And so I love how he puts it. This is a very polite description of theft. It's nothing short of theft from your business.
It's so hard to think like that. Nobody just initially has that reaction. Even with the grocery store, it's a perfect example. Like you said, it's, oh, I've already paid for this. Well, no, the business paid for it. You have to separate your personal finances from your business, and recognize that like you're the consumer and the, seller. So that honesty of changing roles and putting yourself in the role of I'm the shopper right now. I'm not the grocery store owner. And having that separation is so key. Keeping
those roles between owner and consumer.
It's like role playing with yourself. Like, okay, today I'm the grocery store owner and now I'm the buyer,
Another reason to need our imagination here as well.
Exactly.
But going into this next paragraph, we're going to see a little bit of the why this is so important. Go ahead with that one.
If you are unaware of the prevalence of theft in the retail business, do yourself a favor and make friends with someone who owns or manages a retail business. Then ask about how common is theft by employees. The answer will probably shock you. Question: who pays for all of this theft? The customers who go past the cashier with their goods and pay for them. That's who. It can't come from anywhere else. Theft is devastating. Just consider if your wife steals 1 can of peas, you have to sell 20 to make up for it.
That's the why right there. We tend to think, well, she just took 1 can of peas. We just need to replace 1 can of peas. But if it takes you selling 20 cans of peas to actually replace that 1 can of peas, that's a whole nother ballgame. It's just thinking about it mathematically and correctly. So you can see why that's devastating. So I think about that. How many meals did we eat out of the restaurant? And how much more profit would we have had we paid for that instead of having to sell an exponential number of meals in order to make up for our meals? All right. Go on from here.
There is another thing that makes owners and their family members want to go out the back door. Every business in the United States has a silent partner, the Internal Revenue Service. If your wife goes out the front door and pays retail for her groceries just like everyone else, then your store makes more money than if she went out the back door. And the IRS posture is the more you make, the more we take.
Okay, this is important because there is that justification in our mind that, well, if I actually make it more profitable, I'm going to pay more taxes. So he brings this up as just one of the, shall we say, incentives or reverse incentives to not be as profitable because then we're going to have to pay tax on it. So that's one thing. But I also really want to point out here that he calls the IRS the silent partner in every business. And that description is so apt because the IRS is our silent partner. We don't often think about what the IRS is doing in our partnership, right? I remember seeing this so much more when I was investing in real estate and I was rehabbing the property and then I turned around and sold it for a profit and had to give so much of it to the IRS. And I thought, where was the IRS? Were they like,
sweating
beside me, slinging some paint on the walls? No, I didn't see that partnership. So you don't think about it. And so you don't consider just how devastating that loss is. But that partner is with us, whether we like it or not. It's interesting to me that it is structured in such a way, right? W-2 employees don't see the amount of tax going out of their paycheck because it's going out every single paycheck. They don't have it in their hands first and have to turn over and hand it. Your business owner is more apt to see the actual total amount of tax, having to write that check to the IRS than your W-2 employee. But they also have more tax deductions because they have business expenses that they can write off. But if everybody saw that partnership for what it really is, and it wasn't so silent, shall we say, I think we might have a revolution. But he goes on to talk about what if we didn't have that situation. And this is where he's getting to with becoming your own banker. It is one way to actually eliminate some of that partnership. So Jonathan, did you have any comments on that particular paragraph before we went forward?
Yeah, we kind of talked a little bit before we pressed record on this, and the fact of the IRS being the silent partner, and just, I think intentionally it's clearly designed to try and keep us as far away from the reality of cutting the checks to the IRS. If we actually were involved in the process of, hey, here's your paycheck and now here's what you owe the IRS from it, write the check for it. Like there's this separation that we have from the reality of our taxes and what's being essentially taken from us and from our own earnings. And I think that's for a reason, because if you actually had to do that, I think you would just be so much more aware of the silent partnership, and it wouldn't be so silent. And you would just be much more aware of what amount is being taken from you and for what purpose. And then I think that whether you agree or not, or if you're okay with that, I think I would encourage anyone to then consider what that money is being used for or where it's going. But yeah, that would be my only.
When we don't see it and we don't add it all up between property tax and sales tax and income tax, we don't realize just how devastating this silent partner is. And we have programs that are designed to defer taxes down the road as if they're not going to hit us. People want to make this comparison. Of course, I've said it a million times already on here. This is not an investment, nor is it to be compared to one. But if you're going to compare anything, you should consider the tax piece. And Nelson's going to go on to talk about how we can actually mitigate our tax situation using the infinite banking concept, because we have dividends compounding that never see taxation if we practice the infinite banking concept correctly. And then it goes to our heirs tax-free as well. So you have to consider what tax you're actually paying, whether they're deferred or not, out of your investments when you see what's happening with the infinite banking concept.
A little add on there, when you mentioned about tax deference, it's also the thought that taxes might be lower later, which is hardly ever the case.
Right. It's all mind games. Mm-hmm. It's all really truly is. So, and they're not stupid. They know what they're doing. And there was a time when it actually changed to where the taxes came from your employer before you saw your paycheck. And that changed things.
Yep.
All
Frank,
right.
I wish I had the actual number in front of me, but I had read once that there's something between 80 and 100 individual taxes that you pay, whether sales tax, property tax, et cetera, et cetera. There's something like, it's upwards of 80 plus individual types of taxes that we pay every year, whether we realize it or not. Gas tax is a great example. The price you see at the pump is including the tax that was already put on the gas.
It's true. I've seen a meme where you remember Forrest Gump, fried shrimp, gumbo shrimp, all the different things. It's like that with taxes.
Yeah, it's
property tax, income tax, gas tax, sales tax, restaurant tax, entertainment, whatever.
Oh, here in Wake County, we have Wake County tax, which is just a general tax applied to everything on top of your sales tax.
Great.
But suppose we could have a situation where the profits from the sale of groceries are not subject to income tax. Now we have eliminated one of the incentives to go out the back door with goods. The only problem that remains is the human instinct to want to use the backdoor privilege. This urge must be overcome. Your business is at stake.
Okay. So again, it's a business. Always think of it as the banking business. We have a saying around here, you should always be in two businesses, your own business and the banking business. But this is the importance of keeping that mindset of it being a business. Now, obviously, he says, suppose we could have a situation where the profits from the sale of groceries are not subject to income taxes. That would be a good thing, wouldn't it? And he's trying to help us realize that as we're comparing this grocery store business to becoming your own banker, essentially, we're going to get to that place if we properly practice the infinite banking concept, because we're collateralizing our cash values. There's no tax involved there. There's only a tax if you surrender or withdraw. So we do not promote that because you can avoid those taxes. And yet you not only have your premium going in, which by the way is going in as after tax dollars. You've already paid the tax on those dollars. Then they're going in and they're buying death benefit. And it's producing dividends that are buying more death benefit, and cash value is growing, death benefits growing, and all of that is happening income tax free as long as we are properly conducting the infinite banking concept with our whole life insurance policy. So just a little bit of that comparison there to understand that we don't have to have the IRS as a silent partner in this situation, which is one of the big benefits of the infinite banking concept. But we do have to still worry about that human instinct. The life insurance company is going to do what the life insurance company is going to do. The problem is the human problem. Very easy for us to still want to use that backdoor privilege. All right.
Yeah. Can you imagine how much better off everyone would be if they had a 20 to 30% pay raise, no income tax? Even that one alone, I mean, if you cut any of them out and you cut that one, I've always said that alone, I think would just do insane numbers for people. Like it would just go such a long way.
Well, and that goes right back to what Nelson says. Aren't you just a little bit suspicious when the entity that created the problem is giving you the exception to the problem rather than just cutting out the tax or lowering the tax, which they could do.
Yep.
They completely could do. There's a reason they don't.
Yep.
All right.
They'd rather just give you their solution.
Right. Why is that?
However, you and your family, plus maybe some others, are captive customers for your store. You all are not going somewhere else to buy groceries. By now, you should realize that if you charge these captive customers wholesale prices, you have defeated the purpose of the business, to provide income for you and to build a business that you will eventually sell and use the proceeds for retirement income. If you charge them retail prices, you are going in the right direction. But these are captive customers. Why not charge these folks 62 cents for the can of peas? The extra 2 cents will go directly to additional capital to buy more cans of peas to sell to the other customers. Hopefully you can see what continued use of this practice can do to the profitability of your business. Do this over a long number of years and your record books will show a superior profitability picture.
Okay. So he is proposing that we not only don't steal out the back door or even just pay wholesale prices, but that our family, our captive customers, whether that's immediate family, our own selves, or friends or whoever might be consuming from our business, but actually to charge them extra. Why? How do you understand that?
Actually, I'm really excited about this paragraph alone because we've talked about this off camera ourselves. But I will say one thing here. So it's kind of very against the grain, right? Where does our mind go? Well, the friends and family discount, right? Like I run a business. Like, for example, I think it's a super easy example. Say a family member builds porches, right? And it's like, oh, hey, brother, I need a new porch. Can't you give me a discount? You know, my friends and family discount. That's the natural reaction because we're kind. We care about each other.
Sure.
We want to help each other. But there's a reverse thought to that. Wouldn't you want to support your brother's business? Wouldn't you want him to be successful? And there has to be this kind of separation. And I will say I'm really proud of my own generation because it's kind of become popular on Instagram or whatever for people to actually pay more to their friends for their business because they want them to do well. Mm-hmm. And I definitely don't think that used to be very normal. And it's still not maybe the norm, but I do see that becoming more widely accepted. Like, no, I'm not going to discount my friend just because they're my friend. If they're my friend and they want me to do well, they should be supporting my business and be okay with that. And it's not a matter of, oh, I'm being unfair or I'm being greedy. Our prices are set for a reason. If you're cutting them, you're selling yourself short and you're actually doing yourself a disadvantage.
Right. Where does the generosity land?
Exactly. And so I think it just requires, again, a little shift of your thinking and a little bit of a rethinking your thinking of putting yourself outside of the friendship role. Here it goes back to that imagination. Yes, we're best friends. Yes, I'd want to discount. I'd want to help my friend. But the reverse should be true of that too. And you should put yourself in the role of, oh, I'm customer, they're business owner. What is that relationship? You know, it's a different relationship. And it's just a matter of putting yourself in the shoes to be in that right role. So for me, I chose when I purchased a car last year to finance the majority of it through the family banking system. Now I paid a higher interest rate than I would have had I gone just directly to Navy Fed or to Honda itself. But the reality is that I recognize that the interest I was paying to another party, to another person's family, was not free money, but because they're doing me a service, and I'm okay with that, right? Like, I'm paying for the service of them giving me money I did not have access to, and that's okay.
Right.
But why wouldn't you rather do that for your family rather than somebody else's family, right?
Like, why would I want to go to Food Lion when I own Publix?
Exactly. But then there's even another benefit to that, right? Oh, not only is this interest going to now my family instead of another entity, hey, guess what? That interest that goes to my family, I will see again.
That's right.
I can use again. The interest I paid to the credit card company, to the bank, to the car financiers, whatever, I will never see that ever again. And it's crazy is most people that go and buy a car tend to turn it in within like a year or so. And they pretty much paid interest only, never paid anything down on the actual base cost. And so that's how these companies make so much money, because they're literally just financing. They're not actually ever selling a car. And so regardless of all that, just as a simple matter of fact, I would so much rather my hard-earned money go to my family, and then I can both reutilize that now, but also it's going to a system, again, the idea of selling the business for your partner, for your family, for your kids, for your grandkids. By me putting money back into the family system, ultimately, I will see that money again, whether I'm actively using it or whether I receive it as an inheritance windfall. It seems fairly obvious to me.
Yeah, so that's what distinguishes this a little bit from the grocery store business, because although it's very close, but if I have a grocery store business, and because my close friends and family have paid 62 cents instead of 60 cents, and that business has increased its profitability, and now I can sell that business down the road for more money because it's based on the profits of the company as to how it is valued, then I not only have a greater retirement plan ready for me, but potentially I have more money to leave to my family down the line. So with becoming your own banker, and especially having a built-in inheritance piece to it, when you borrow against the policy that is in the family and you're a beneficiary of that policy, then yeah, you're going to see that money back again in spades. And I might add a little nuance to this as well that we often don't think about. And that is, when you get to middle age, your parents are aging. And so many people get to this place in their life where they're finally making the most income they've ever made in their lives. But if their parents are not prepared for nursing costs and, living in their old age, that lands on the children. Well, by putting this system together and making it more profitable, you're also providing for your parent to have more so that less of that burden is upon you and you get the inheritance. So there's that piece too. So when someone in the family doesn't understand, why in the world would I want to borrow from a policy on my mom or my dad or sister or brother, whether they know it or not? Just like the wife going out the back door, it's a polite description of theft from the family, because to do it in the family is to keep the money in the family, which ultimately benefits every member of the family. But we have lost a mindset. Like you said, instead it's going to somebody else's family. It is going to a family. It's just whether it's yours or some other executives at the bank or some other elite billionaire. So what would you prefer? And then that only grows better and better for each generation. That now, even as we say, describing it as a polite description of theft, I think it honestly is just ignorance, not understanding what's really happening. And Nelson would always say, if you really understand what's happening, you'll know what to do. And I know we're touching on a subject here where a lot of people are afraid to do business with their family. And there has to be clear boundaries and clear understanding. But when there is, then this is a fantastic way to keep the wealth in the family. And that is what the wealthy do. They circle the wagons. They think differently. They are not working individually as we have been more or less conditioned to do.
I guarantee they're educated on it and not ignorant to these things. Absolutely.
That's why they have family office meetings, right?
And to your point, like the doing business with family, yeah, it just like, of course, people get worried about those things, and that's understandable. Especially, for example, our family, we have 7 kids. There's such a varying, vast, just difference of personalities, of opinions, all these things.
Sure.
But the reality is if you can get it down to that baseline understanding that we just summarized there of this interest is going to go to somebody's family, yours or someone else's, which would you really prefer? And focusing on that. And then obviously, of course, understanding every other aspect of it. But I do think that that's the key right there is just.
And it's not just like it's only going to mom.
Exactly.
You get to become your own banker too.
It's a system.
It's a system of policies that everyone can participate in, both the borrowing and the lending and being the bank owner and being the consumer, all of it. So it's not like one has opportunity over another. If anything, the second and third generation has an advantage with the windfall that's going to come.
Absolutely. They're starting in a much better place. And it really just starts with one, right? I mean, you're the example for us. Took one person to begin. And now I have my own system as well as a system of yours that I'm able to lean into as well. And that's something that I even hit on when I said, why be willing to pay more to you? Is really realistically is when I do that, right? When I'm paying 62 cents for the can of peas, is now there's more for me to utilize as well.
Exactly. Okay.
When you sell your business some years later, you are in competition with someone else who has not obeyed these principles. He and his family members took their groceries out the back door and etc. The record books of this man's business will never look as good as yours. That is, if he's still in business. In all probability, he has gone out of business long ago. But even if he is still around, can you guess which business will bring the better price? Yours. And this makes it possible for you to clip larger coupons at retirement time. I hope that you have learned this little lesson well. We will revisit the grocery store later on in this book. And if you understand the grocery store, the rest of learning how to be your own banker is a piece of cake.
Okay. So that idea of clipping larger coupons is really just saying there's going to be more passive income there available to you in those retirement years and more inheritance also with the death benefit to the next generation. So we have seen here in this entire section on the grocery store how Nelson is using imagination to teach us a comparison between the grocery store and becoming your own banker. We've also seen the real importance of long-term thinking, because if we don't look long-term, we don't think about those consequences when we steal that single can of peas out the back door, because we're not thinking about the profitability down the road and how that is going to be exponentially greater just because of 2 extra cents, which is why we teach people when you borrow against your policy, pay back the interest to the life insurance company, but pay extra interest to yourself. That becomes extra premium, becomes new cans of peas that can turn and grow your wealth. The other thing I was thinking about in this section is being an honest banker, right? We're not being thieves, even if it is a polite description of theft. It's still theft. So we don't want to be a dishonest banker. So when we borrow against our policies, we want to be sure to have a plan to pay them back. Now, that could be a long-term plan. I think it was for Nelson when he was in crisis. I think it took a long time for him to get to the point of actually paying himself back because he was busy paying off the bankers. And that's okay. Just have a plan, right? Whether that's your monthly amortization schedule, whether that's I'm going to pay for an investment, let that investment pay itself back someday when I sell the property or whatever it might be, or whether that's take care of all of these debts first. But just because you take care of the outside bankers and you get those out of your life, now you got to start paying yourself back. So all of those things are involved here. Nelson has these golden rules, and those are at least 3 of them. I don't know if you could think of any others that would be don't do business with banks, right? That's one. Yep. Because instead we want to do business with our own bank, but we got to get the other banks out of our life first. So any final thoughts on this before we wrap this up?
I just love the grocery store example. I think that reading this section for the very first time is one of those just like click moments for me where it was just like, this makes so much sense. Like, it's just something I never thought of because truthfully, like, it's just our natural human instinct to go out the back door. Well, I own this. Why wouldn't I just treat myself better, do it for free, et cetera, et cetera. And I just think if you truly can kind of understand it, like he says, if you can grasp this example, the rest of learning becomes a piece of cake, just because it's showing you the importance of stepping outside of yourself, of being able to use your imagination to think, okay, I am no longer Mr. Banker. I am Mr. Borrower. Mr. Borrower has to be a good, borrower and has to pay back his bills. And then also the idea of, being the grocery store owner.
Also the banker.
Yes, exactly.
So,
Exactly.
yeah.
And being able to distinguish those roles, recognize both of them simultaneously, and shift yourself between the two. I think that is just so key here, as well as, he really hits on the long-term thinking here as well. Like, I know personally in my life, I've been very reactionary. I'm very much so like an animal where it's like, oh, next thing. Okay, I gotta do this, gotta do this, gotta do this. And my brother and I were speaking about this just yesterday, that, I've never really taken the time to just sit and think long-term. As he explains, Nelson does, that, he was a forester. He was thinking in 70-year stints often. And so many of us, we're just thinking about tomorrow or today. And the importance there to really take the time to think long term. And then also just the importance here of being honest, both with yourself and with your family and with others in this entire business and in any other business you do. It requires scrupulous honesty to be successful, both with yourself and with others. I think that applies to not just business, but to anything, right? Like,
sure,
we should be honest people and we should be transparent. So I just think that there's so much packed into such a good, simple example of just where he frames this so well with this grocery store example and puts so much important information in here. So I'm a big fan of this section.
Yeah, there's so much to think about. And when you were speaking, you reminded me of another way to think about this. And that is, if we value, like we show that we value a bank's capital every time we pay our bills on time and pay that loan back and we pay them interest. And yet we don't think about valuing our own capital the same way. So as a family, we should be valuing our capital at least as much as we value a third-party bank. So when we think, well, why would I want to pay that extra interest to the family? We are not understanding or valuing our own family like we are people that we don't even know, the stranger, the bank on the corner. But yeah, this whole section, I can't say that I took to it as quickly as you did. I remember the first time I read it, I was confused.
I definitely read it twice. Allow me to say that. I definitely read it twice.
And I think part of that is not having been a business owner or even growing up in the business world, but we didn't think this way. You have to unlearn before we can learn. And that unlearning process is actually sometimes the harder piece than learning something new. Anyways.
I will add one little thought there. Kind of, I think it's so easy to go and think when, we're involved with family or with friends, and the whole idea of the discount, right, that we kind of got back to. It's like, it's not a matter of greed or, oh, I want what I need. But in reality, even if you just think of it as like, if your family or friend's business becomes more successful, they're putting themselves in a better position to be more generous. So I just think that there's kind of an initial kickback response where somebody might hear something like this and go, well, why shouldn't I be generous with my friends and family? Why shouldn't I give them a better discount, et cetera, or feed them for free? And the reality is you just got to shift that thinking to where, well, if my business is successful and my business is doing well, if I am an honest, good person, I should be able to be more generous with my success.
Well, let's clarify that for just a second, because I think that is a key point. So generosity doesn't mean, this is just clarifying. If you're going to be generous and give something away, what it's actually costing you, right?
Excellent.
It's not just costing you the $100. It's costing you the $100 plus everything that $100 could have earned in the future. It's the opportunity cost as well. So it's just really taking stock of what you're giving away. So it doesn't mean don't be
give
generous,
away. Yeah.
Right? It just means recognize the actual cost of that generosity. Be as profitable as you can be and be as generous as you can be.
Yeah, and I think you just hit that on the head. Thank you.
Yeah. So because I do think it can be taken incorrectly. So nobody is saying that there's never a time in your life that you should give. By all means, we absolutely should. But when we're running a business, recognize the cost of running that business and being generous. All right.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it any better. That was great.
All right. Well, let's wrap it up here for today. Then I think we will hit up the problem next, and that'll be fun as well, because until we know what the problem is, we can't figure out the solution. So thank you, Jonathan, for being here with me today. I know you've had a very busy schedule, so appreciate that. Hope you have a wonderful time in Florida. And to all of our listeners out there, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you all so much.
Thanks for tuning in to the Bankless by Design podcast, where we're done with the system and we're doing money differently. Be sure to subscribe, share this episode with someone who needs it, and visit us at banklessbydesign.com to learn how you can start living bankless by design.